Hey, what's up? This is Frederik Steinmetz for cgtutsplus.com, and today I'm going to show you how to create this scene, and the main interest lies on this fog over here. So this fog is actually 3D. It has nothing to do with the mist or with the compositor and the Z depth. This is actually a 3D object, and the big advantage is that if you move the camera, this fog will stay in place. So let's have a look at the compositing of this scene. It's not very much. So I just have a few nodes, and our sun here I made on a separate render layer, and the reason is that it was really hard to get the colors of the sun right, even though once you look through the fog, because the fog has its own color. It's slightly bluish, and when I made the sun reddish, yellowish, it turned green. So I thought the easiest way to work around that is to render the sun separately and then composite it in, well, the compositor is a separate render layer. So we're gonna get started by creating this little boat, and for that I have a reference picture. It's right over here. I just typed in sailboat in Google, and that one came up, and it looks quite nice. So I'm going to put this on my other screen so it is not in the way while I'm modeling, and I'm going to switch back to my modeling view. You get to this node editor, if you have never used it, by pressing Control left arrow, and with Control right arrow we'll get back to my modeling setup. So instead of loading a completely new file, I'm just gonna press 4 and get on a new layer and just get started. And as you can see, this scene is not very detailed. Everything's in the fog and it's in the backlight, and you can hardly even make out the texture of the stone over here. So I'm not gonna spend too much time modeling detail into this ship, so we're just gonna make a very crude sailboat, and I'll just begin by adding a cube. If you haven't deleted your default cube, feel free to use that one. Finally, one of the few tutorials where you can use it. And I'll just press Y to get into wireframe mode, or Z I think, and then I'll just extrude this out just a bit, something like that, and then I'll press S and Y to make this a little bit more shippy, well, get the form of a ship. And I really like turning on the subdivision surface modifier fairly early in the modeling, and one reason is that I use it almost for every model that I make, and the second one is it just makes this crude thing here so much nicer to look at. So it's I'm more happy with my results before I'm done. So if you want to activate the subsurf modifier, all you need to do is go to object mode like it is right now and press Ctrl 2, and that will assign a subsurf modifier with 2 subdivisions to your object. Okay, let's continue. If you check out the model of the ship again, you can see that it's slightly convex, so this part is a bit higher than the 2 far points. I'm sorry, I don't speak sailor English, so well, I'll just call this the front and this the back. And so you can see there's a tiny arch between the front and the back. Well, add it in the comments if you want to teach me sailing language in English. Anyways, what I'll just do for that is I'll grab these two, and if you're not in wireframe mode, you might, and you grab these two with the B key and then the B key, and then draw this rectangle around it. If you move this up, you can see, oops, I only moved up the 2 front parts. And what is a bit weird is, even though you can see this vertex here, you cannot select it. And the reason is it's obscured, and without the subdivision surface modifier you wouldn't see it, so it still counts as an obscured vertex. And if you want to get rid of all this, just disable this and you can access any vertex that you like. And on I usually have this off because on complex models you'll get confused if you have too many vertices poking through. So let's re-enable it for this part, and also let's just form this outline of the boat. So you might want to try and get these even. To make the distance between two loop cuts, to keep this fairly even, because that will make it easier to modify things later on. And this is now not sharp enough in my taste, so I'll just extrude this, move this a little more, and I'll press Ctrl R to get a loop cut in here, and press Ctrl R again, move this up here, and this one I'll press SY to, no, let's make one more loop cut first, like that, and with Alt right click we can select this loop cut and SY to scale it in. And this way we can have this Windows 7 is too smart for me. Okay, we'll have this line here. We can sort of make this line going on. I'm not going to texture this boat because, as I said, it's gonna be very low poly and it's gonna be hidden in the fog anyways. So we have a dent here. I don't like that, but Blender has a great function that I'm still missing in the other programs. If I press S, Y, and 0, you'll see that it's been straightened out. And if I Alt right click on this one again, SY0, you can see my line has been straightened out. And if I want to straighten it out even more, I'll do this. And I'll select only those. If you B and middle drag, then you can deselect your vertices. Again, SY0, and same thing here, SY0. And now we have this starting at the beginning of the boat. Okay, next thing we'll need is have this stick out. So I'll select those vertices, and if you press C, you can have the same thing with B, just with a circle instead of a square. So I'll just move this along here. Maybe move those down, and this is actually starting to look shippy. If you wanna flatten out an edge in a subserved model, you can always add another loop cut and move them closer. You can also work with a crease, but I'm not gonna do that for now. And the boat, of course, is also thicker in the middle. So scale this up and restrict it to the y-axis, so SY, axis SY, and give it sort of a belly to this boat, SY. Okay, that's the base for our boat. Let's have another look, and this time I'll try to not scale it up. Okay, okay. There we have the boat, and you can see that it has handles. I really don't speak boat. Reeling. Well, let's call it handles, and let's just quickly model those. What I did in my scene was just add a curve, Bezier curve, and if you look at it from the side, RY90, R90 minus, and R45, and we have an even arc. Okay, and let's bring this to the front of the ship, about here, and in front view I'll extrude these. Just press E and you have them extruded, and apparently it only works with one at a time, so I'll actually delete those and try something like a mirror modifier later on. And that should have been, only this one should have been deleted. Okay, with front view, E to extrude, and then I'll rotate these Okay, let's move this in as well, and also this looks weird. Yeah, this is now way too low. Okay, that should do. Okay, now this looks very weird, so as you can see, those are Bezier handles, just like you'd get them in any other program. And the big advantage in Blender is that you don't have to, like in After Effects, you'd have to hit this tiny button exactly with your left mouse. If you don't, the mask gets deselected and you can start over. In Blender, you just right click on one of the handles, and then you can either use G on the side handles or R on the middle handle to position them. You can also use G on the middle handle, but you can also break the handles if you press V or H. I think H. But I want curved lines, so I'm not going to use that feature now. And let's actually try and mirror this. I haven't tried it with curves, so I can't promise any good result, but let's just press A until everything's selected, move our cursor something like here, press Shift D, then press point on your keyboard, not on the numpad, and then press S, Y, and -1. And apparently that worked. Now take this one, F, and we have the curve again. Okay, now this overlapment here is too much, so it creates a jagged edge. Let's just correct this, and there we go. We mirrored a curve. It actually worked. Great. Okay, and those should be on the same level on the Z-axis, so just press S, Z, and 0. That did not work because we're still in anchor point mode. So press comma on your keyboard and then press SZ0, and there we go. We have now a straight bar handle thingy for a ship. I'm really surprised that I don't know that I know so few boating vocabulary in English. I guess it's because I've never been sailing in America. And this because, as after all, this the tutorial is about fog. The other bars, they're coming down here. And before I do that, I'm gonna insert a curve circle and scale it down. And you can name these. I'll just leave it at circle.001 because it's the only one we're gonna use. Alright, I have to select this one. It can't be its own bevel object for obvious reasons. Okay, there it is, and we can scale this down, and now we have this curve sort of filled with an edge. How do you say? Well, it's been beveled. Anyways, the reason why I did this before is so I don't have to use the same bevel object and bevel width. I'll just duplicate this one and delete those two because I don't need them. And I'll press Ctrl Alt Shift C to reset the origin to the geometry R90, and then I'll just bend these until they're somewhat roundish. I don't know. SX-1 to mirror it. Yeah, I'm not going to get into much detail on how to position these. I'll just do this very roughly. Just make sure there's no gap in between them, just because that would actually show. But as for the intersection here, which is something I normally try to avoid, but in this case it's not going to be a problem. I just hit Shift D to duplicate this and repositioned it a bit. Okay, there we go. This could still use some more. Yeah, that looks better. Okay, For the main mast, all I'm gonna do is add a cylinder, and where's the cylinder? There it is. And press F6 and change this to, I don't know, 8 should do. And if you now press S and Z, you can scale this way up, and then press S and Shift Z to scale it along the other two axes. And now we have our mast, and we can also use it's actually faster, I think. We can use the edit mode in order to scale our mast, because then we just move the height, and we're not bound to some weird pivot point. Okay, that's the mast, and if I have a look at my model, I can see there's a second mast, and I press R90, and we have them orthogonal to each other. And in edit mode, I'll just select those. And actually this boat is really short, so I'll just move these over here, press R to get another keyframe, and edge loop, not keyframe, and move these up. So yeah, that looks a lot better for proportional wise. Okay, that's our masts. And now I'll have another look. Yeah, this is roughly twice. No, this is a bit more than the length of the boat, if I can see this correctly on my reference footage. And it also should move a bit to the back, something like that. And then I'll add a plane, Rx90, to have it face the view. And I'll move these two up to here, and these two move down. Press Ctrl R and insert a few loop cuts, and now I'll move these two closer together, and I'll make this pointy, because this is going to be a sail, and the sail tends to be pointy. Okay, now you're probably wondering why I loop cutted it before I positioned it, and you're right, that was stupid. So yeah, that saves a lot of time to do this correctly. Okay, now this sail is not parallel to the boat. It's caught some wind in my reference footage, so now we should sub-loop cut it and also make a one or two diagonal loop cuts, because it's gonna have some volume, or well, the inside has, not the sail itself. Okay, so move these out a little, and this one a bit as well, and even more goes for those two. And if we look from the side view, we can even rotate this a bit. Move it out and rotate it a bit. And this is not exactly what I wanted, so I rotate it around the Z-axis as well. And correct these. And yeah, we're starting to get a sail that has a volume. I think I made the volume in, yeah, some point over here, and make this a bit more straight. And I guess that should do also. Control 2, I'm gonna set a subsurf modifier to make this a little more round, and sharpen the edges with another loop cut. And you might think, this is such a small structure, why would I make this so high poly? The reason is it doesn't add render time at all if this is 1,000 faces or 2,000 faces, doesn't matter, because it's not going to have a material. Smooth is always a good idea, so let's do sort of the same thing over here. Plane Rx90, and go into edit mode and move this over here. One of the ropes, and I'll add another one It's going to be a lot shorter, just so it doesn't look that boring, because there's a lot of ropes on the sailboat, I've been told. Actually, I did go sailing in Germany, I just don't know the English terms. One more maybe, and let's make this a little smaller. If you scale this in object mode, then you make the entire rope smaller, and if you scale it in object mode, then you'll just make it shorter. Alrighty, let's not spend too much time on this. You can make your boat more pretty than mine if you want to, but I'm gonna say I'm happy with this. Okay, it's not going to do much anyway, so just press smooth on these two. I'm not sure if you can see it in the final result, but I'm going to do it anyways. And I also inserted this black stripe here, those two, in my render, but you couldn't see them at all, so I'm not going to do that. There's our boat. That was the main modeling part. Let's just create the cliff. And for the cliff, there's a nice technique. You just need a seamless texture, and I found this seamless texture by typing in seamless stone texture, and on ftextures.com they got this high-res seamless stone texture that I'm going to use. And to use a texture in Blender, just drop it into the image editor, which is a great new feature, and give this cube a few modifiers to make it look a bit more random. So I'll start with the subdivision surface. I'll just press Ctrl 3 and make this smooth. There we go. And then a displace modifier. For the displace modifier, of course, you need a texture to work with. I'll add a new material, add a new texture, and turn it off, and I'll move it down a little and call it displace. And I'll select the texture over here. You can see I still have the old textures. Turn the strength way down and add another subdivision surface. And that doesn't work. If you just press Ctrl 1 again, that won't work, because it will just reset this, which is actually quite nice, because you can select a couple of objects and then press Ctrl 1 and reduce their subdivision surface modifier to 1. And 1 should do over here. And since this is a cliff and not a pebble, let's make this a bit bigger. From now on we can start looking through the camera, and also it's a good idea to select everything here and make sure this is brighter than the rest of the objects, and press Ctrl P to make it parent to the object. So now if I move the boat, everything moves. That's exactly what I want. And let's move this rock in the foreground and scale it way down apparently. And Ctrl-Shift-C, origin to geometry, so it doesn't behave as weird. And if we select this back here, and we can also add another loop cut here to make this more cliff-like, and we can move this up, for example. So now we have a rock in the foreground. It's a matter of texturing that thing. You can see our sailboat is really big at the moment, so let's just scale this down. And let's get this rock a material, call it rock, and we need our texture now. So press new, select image or movie, and here you can choose the stone texture. Okay. Since this is seamless, we can change the projection to cube, and that means from the original cube that we have, to each side there will be one texture applied. And since they're seamless, they'll blend together, and after they're applied, then this entire subdivision surface and displacement modifier, then it'll gonna be applied. Press Shift D to duplicate this one, and press RX90, And actually I might wanna remove those edge cuts. Edge loop, Alt and edge loop, and Alt right click on it, edge loop, and also bring in this one and let this sit over here, something like that. I mean, you can decorate your scene any way you like. Okay, then I did have a little island in the background, G, and I'm not going to model that tree because it's you can get a lot of trees. You can use Gen 3, you can use Arboro, you can download you can download sample trees and so on. And this sample tree actually comes from a free package, just as those rocks actually, that is on blenderguru.com. It's a very nice resource for some natural material stuff, and actually I'll also grab these plants, which are also from that package, and I'll just, not the camera, actually let's use the camera as well. Press M and 4, and go back to my layer 4, and there we go, we have all this in the scene. Yeah, I'm going to use the rock that came with it, and I'm going to move all this a bit back and scale this up. Maybe we should make these parented to the rock as well as this tree. Let's parent this tree to the rock. It's always a good idea to have it. Let's press Alt P. This is parented to another rock. So if you change the parent, it will lose whatever transformation were made through the old parent. So if you have an object parenting and jumping like that, just press Alt P and say clear track and keep transformation, and then press Control P and parent it to the new object, and that should take care of that. Okay, as I said, I'm not gonna spend too much time. I keep promising this, I know. Something like this, maybe even make them bigger. That should do. Now, this plane of course does not look like water, so Control 4, because we're gonna need a lot of cuts for this. And then also make the displace modifier, use a texture, you can use the same texture actually, and awesome. Change this to 0.05 and change this to simple, and also make it smooth. And you can see now that ripples are still very big, and usually I use modifiers as long as I can. I don't apply those modifiers as I don't have to, but in this case I'm going to subdivide this twice, which is sort of applying a subdivision surface of 2. And you can see that this is actually still way too strong, so change this to 0.01 and subdivide this again. And this plane is actually what will boost the render times. This will really get the render times up, because it's gonna be mirror reflective as well, which eats a lot of render time. So this is the big disadvantage, of course, of my scene. It's it needs a lot of render time compared to the mist or the fog that you usually get in the 3D tutorials, but it has its advantages. It will yeah, stay on the camera. Now let's add the fog itself. I'll add a cube, and I'll go to front mode and make the cube as high as I need it to be, something like that, and then press S and Shift Z to make it span the entire scene. And there we go, it's now covering the entire scene. And if you go to Object, you can display this as wired, so it's not in the way. Now, many of you probably know the volume material only from from the smoke stuff. Save this. And the reason, I guess, is because if you use the volume material on its own, like in the early versions before the cloud generator, and if you just use a volume material with the cloud, it just doesn't look hideous, but it doesn't look like anything you would use in a serious project. So just to demonstrate clouds and influence the density. Okay. And lamp hemi. Let's check if this is in the scene. Okay. There's not much you can do with this. It's I mean, it's a cube with a few clouds. Of course, the density changes in here, and if you move the camera inside, it might look a little better. But with just a single texture, you can forget getting anything out of the volume material, in my opinion. So let's work around that. Let's just use two textures. And yeah, before you use the texture, change the density down to 0, because otherwise it won't. You can't subtract density with a texture. You can only add. So move your density scale down to 0 from the beginning. We'll keep this texture, call it clouds, but it has to be a lot bigger. And we'll also add a texture that is a blend texture, and it's going to be vertical. And let's call this blend. And the big secret about the blend texture is that it's going to be a stencil texture, and that means there will be nothing, and on the top there will be everything. So let's change that. Okay, great. I ran out of disk space, so the last part of this tutorial didn't get saved. So I hope I'm not telling you anything double, or twice. But what I did is I got the blend texture to be a stencil, and that means where this is alpha, everything's alpha, everything below. No matter if the clouds add to it again, it'll stay 0 transparency. And the clouds will now add to this, to the space where they still can. And this is just a normal clouds texture where I increase the brightness and decrease the brightness, increase the contrast, and also yeah, that's about it. If you want to make these fog thingies here be broader or more narrow, if you decrease this, it gets broader. If you increase this, those get more narrow. So I like those, and they're quite broad, even though this is not, and that is because our cube is scaled in x-axis so strongly. Okay, now this material works. I hope you could copy all the settings. I changed another thing, and the density scale I changed down to 0.15, which probably is a bit too low, so you feel free to change this up to 0.25 or something. And I also changed the transmission and reflection color to a light blue. And now something you saw, if your eyes were quick enough, you saw it on this render. I inserted a sun. So I'll insert a circle and F6 and fill it. And we can also align it to view. And let's check, it's right behind this tree, which is great. And let's put it into the tree, scale it up a little, and put our sun right where it is, because I mean the position of the sun doesn't make any difference, but as to where the light is falling, but it does to the specular. So also it's a good idea to get ray shadows for the sun, because then the bushes here will cast a shadow, and otherwise the sun will throw its specularity across this plane wherever it pleases. If I haven't, no shadows from the trees, so it will be bad. If I haven't shown you, just make this material reflective and boost up the intensity and the hardness. And the world settings are a blend sky. I have a clouds texture in here, but I don't think you can see it. And just make the horizon very dark orange, and the zenith, or zenith, not sure, make this a brighter pinkish or peachy color. And also for the sun, let's give this a sun material, and it's going to be shadeless because I don't want to worry about any lighting. It's going to be on a separate layer, so make this dark orange and get it a texture. And I actually used another Musgrave texture. Maybe I've become sick of clouds, I'm not sure, but I'm using Musgrave a lot recently, so let's just call this Musg. And again, I'm going to use a stencil, because the stencil texture is actually very powerful. I hardly ever use the I hardly ever use the texture nodes, because you can do basically all of this with a stencil. Not all of this, I know, but a lot of it. So I'll use a stencil. Also, I don't want the color, but I want the alpha to be influenced. Then this one will have 0.6 and alpha 0.49. That should do. And now our sun is a mix of if I turn down this transparency, I mean, our sun is a mix out of the Musgrave alpha, the circle alpha, and the Musgrave color. I don't like the Musgrave color. I'll set this to a bluish, because that's what our fog color is. So in this way it will appear as if the fog is where the Musgrave is. And actually, I think to make this illusion complete, I need to negative this. But after all, the sun really isn't that important. We can change its color in the compositor, and that's where we're heading right now. Let me just render this. And while it's rendering, I'm going to explain what I did. I moved the sun to the layer Alt 4 and have the rest of the scene on layer 4. And I have a render layer set up over here, and you can always add render layers. If you scroll down this layer and press the plus key, you can add render layers. These scene layers are the ones that are active in your scene, and these are the ones that get rendered. With the main, I rendered the number 4, which has all our stuff on it, and this one only renders number Alt 4, and this is where our sun is. And you can use these to composite in the compositor, which we'll do once this is done rendering. One very important thing, you must uncheck sky for the sun, otherwise it will it won't have a transparent background. And I left sky on this on because we want this purple, this orangey sunset colors. Okay, once this is done rendering, this should look a bit like this. I shift A output viewer, adds this viewer node, and if you can enable backdrop, you can see whatever is in the viewer node in the background of your nodes. Control up arrow to make this full screen. And if I duplicate this render layer, I can change this to sun, and here's my sun. It's not very orangey, but that's alright. We can change that. That's why we isolated the sun. And if I add a shift A color alpha over, I can put the sun on top of this. Oops, sun on top of this. Change this to the viewer, and you can see the sun is on top. And that's not what we wanted. I think in my original scene it worked that I used the alpha here as a factor, but for some reason that does not. So all I did was switch those two, and the sun gets blended in the background. Of course the sun now is way too low, so I'll add Rgb Curves, and if you move them, you see the little line gets orange, and that means there's an image input and image output, and it will just use the image input and image output of those curves. I'll make this brighter so you can see it a little better, and also I'll increase the red. There we go. And we can even make this brighter, I think, and even more red. That's too much red. Okay. You can go back and increase the saturation in the sun itself, but I think for now I'm going to leave it at that. The aliasing issues you can decrease by increasing the anti-aliasing. Of course, it will take longer to render, but you won't get rid of them all. You can use a fill light, because right now we have backlighting in the scene. You can see it, the sun is back here, and you can create a fill light, Hemi. I like Hemi lights because they do exactly what they're supposed to. Just be careful, make this very low intensity, and maybe even increase the intensity of the sun, and that gets rid of some of the artifacts. And also, if you don't use the backlighting at all, that greatly increases the aliasing quality, but for the scene I'm going to leave it at backlighting. And yeah, I guess that's it for one really important tip is do not let your camera during the animation, do not let it pass through the wall here. Keep the camera, sorry about that, keep the camera inside or outside of the volume box at all time, because you get some very weird transition effect when it passes through. Sorry again. When it'll pass through. And yeah, if you like this tutorial, you can check out my site. It's www.golden-orb.net, and there you'll find all the tutorials that I made for CG Tuts Plus in list. Of course, you can also find them if you click on my name here. And also you will find some bits of new tutorials that were either too short or too, I don't know, to get them published on CG Tuts. And yeah, I hope you check out my site. If you like this, also leave a comment, and yeah, have a nice day. Bye.